please welcome to the stage Marjan Faraidooni, the Chief of Education and Culture and Chief of Human Resources at Terra Expo City to Dubai. Saeed Al-Shamsi, Human Capital and Communications Officer at ADNEC Group. Kerem Cengiz, Managing Director for MENA, LWK and Partners. Dr. Abdulmajid, Karanouh, the Director and Global Head of Interdisciplinary Design Innovation at Drees and Sommer. And of course, your moderator, Dr. Miniya, Chatterji, the CEO of Sustain Labs Paris. Please put your hands together in welcoming them to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. We have a wonderful panel, very experienced, very rich, about a topic which is at the heart of the UAE's growth. How do we bring together sustainability and the built environment? So without much further ado, I'm going to quickly introduce each of our panelists. We have Marjan Faraidooni, who's the Chief of Education and Culture and Chief of Human Resources at Terra at Expo City in Dubai. Terra is really a flagship model of sustainable architecture and environmental innovation. I visit Terra quite often. We're engaged with Terra quite a bit, and I always love my visits there. So congratulations on all the good work that you're doing, Marjan. We have Dr. Abdulmajid Karanouh, Director and Global Head of Interdisciplinary Design Innovation at Drees and Sommer. It's a consulting firm and a pioneer in driving sustainability and digitalization. We have Kerem Cengiz, Managing Director of the MENA region for LWK Plus Partners. It's an architecture and design firm known for inculcating sustainability and low-carbon building innovations. Thank you for all the work that you do, the important work that you do, Kerem. With that, Marjan, may I start with a question for you? Terra, how does Terra integrate education and culture into urban planning to create communities that are both sustainable and vibrant?
Well, thank you for having me. That's a very good question. I can stay here for days to answer it. But in a nutshell, for those of you who don't know what Terra is, it's an actual center of education and sustainability located at Expo City, Dubai. It's one of the biggest legacies of Expo 2020, which I hope you visited. And what we did with Terra is we wanted to bring forward the notion of sustainability to the community and to the city. So it was born to be a building that represented sustainability, so it makes its own energy and its own water, using sunlight, which is an abundant resource here in the UAE, as its main source of energy. And within it, the structure comes alive with the cultural component. And the cultural component is through education programs and exhibitions. So we have main exhibitions, we have education programs, not only for schools, but also for corporates and for the community. So we run programs on the weekends, which talk about fungi, which talk about flora, which talk about fauna. And as part of the transition from the Expo, we've introduced a new pillar that's very important for us at Terra today, and it's around impact. Impact within cities. How could we, through Terra, give examples of how we could be nature first in this whole notion of urbanization that we're going through? So just to summarize, we have introduced new programs this year that are being tested within Terra, and we hope we scale it around the city. One that's very dear to me is our pollinator program. We've introduced 100 hive in 100 school, which is starting its pilots this year with 5 schools, to introduce biodiversity in communities. We've also launched the first IUCN Center for macrofungi species to show the importance of fungi as part of the flora and fauna network and part of the ecosystem. And we have many more that's coming through specifically within our landscape. We're looking to become one of the first botanical gardens in the region to promote native plants and native species as a way to educate, but also inspire biodiversity within cities. So Terra's place is within a city, so we use the whole campus of Expo as a living laboratory, and we hope to share our knowledge with the rest of the city and hopefully globally. Thank you.
Thank you. In a nutshell, it's a living lab, right? I like that definition of Terra. Abdulmajid, how is interdisciplinary design reshaping the future of urban spaces to balance functionality, sustainability, and human well-being?
It's probably worth just explaining a little bit the subtle difference between interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary design. Multidisciplinary design is more like the streamlined model that we have in the built environment, where you have different people with different disciplines coming together and really, for the most part, coordinating their works and their scopes. Interdisciplinary tends to be slightly different in the sense that we try to understand the principles of different disciplines and fuse them together to create a new one with added value. Say, for example, if you look at robotics and artificial intelligence, for the most part, what that really is taking the principles of the science of human intelligence, biology, and that of computation, blend them together in order to give you machines with kind of human-like behavior. So in that respect, when it comes to using that to reshape the master plans, or let's just say the designs of urban development, as a management company that focuses a lot on technology, we tend to focus on two main parts, which is, one is the process, and the other one, which is the technology that enables the application of that process. From a process standpoint, interdisciplinary is what we're focusing on, because when it comes to innovation, really it's about combining two or more established ideas or concepts in order to create a new one with added value. But because we are now in a stage where, as you know, the requirements are going through the roof. There's more and more expectations from the design team, from the contractors. The performance requirements are exponentially growing, but the available timeline and budgets to deliver those expectations are becoming forever tighter. So in that respect, really having a process that enables us to quickly be able to integrate those disciplines together to achieve those targets is very important, but also be able to find the technology that can help us to do that is also very important. And that is why we are very heavily starting to rely on computation, which allows us to automate, if you wish, many processes and create efficiencies, but now even more so the case with AI. And I'm sure you've already seen many architects using AI now to develop designs, albeit for the time being, it's more imagery focused, but it's inching closer towards also being functional. And that's really the orientation where we're going at the moment.
Thank you, and that's a nice segue into the question for you, Kerem, that as an architect and urban designer for the last 7 years in Dubai, how do you see human-centered design transforming the way cities in the MENA region can balance density with livability and sustainability?
Thank you. It's a really important question. As a practice, we fundamentally believe in looking at the whole issue of livability at a very grassroots level. Whilst technology is a great enabler, there are well-established and long-standing practices that have existed within this region and within the design to respond to the climates that we live in that doesn't necessarily need technology to be at the forefront, but enhanced by it. So I think one of the first things that we look at is how we make density and how we create environments more equitable. So, you know, I think the density issue, not for the sake of it, it's about how we scale density in an appropriate manner. So we don't have vast single two-story dwellings that take huge amounts of land, impact massively on infrastructure, impacts our bills, etc. And we make those designs and those environments more mixed use rather than the monoculture of residential or office, so that the whole idea of the 10-minute environment becomes practical and real. And not 10 minutes by driving, but 10 minutes by walking. That's the key differentiator. I think the other thing is we look at the microclimate. microclimate is something that massively impacts on how we live our lives. And if we approach our design process with microclimate in mind right from day one, that can shape and enhance the way our communities evolve.
Yeah.
Appropriate shading, appropriate planting, considering the paucity of water that we have, all those strategies need to go in.
Yeah.
And then another element of that is transit.
Yeah.
You know, any of you who live in Dubai, and I think it's probably the same in Abu Dhabi, have noticed that there's an increased amount of traffic on the roads considerably in the last 2 or 3 years since COVID. I mean, it's exponential increase. The amount of road construction that's going in isn't going to alleviate the issues around traffic. It's actually going to exacerbate it. So we look at strategies that provide sustainable sources of last mile transportation from key places that allow us to open up the centers of our urban conurbations to respond to issues around microclimate and diversity, equality in terms of access, and also other modes of transport that need to be probably more integrated than they are at the moment.
Yeah, great, thank you. We are here on a panel about building with community in mind. And if I were to ask each one of you to name one lever of transformation for building with community in mind, what would that be? Marjan, do you want to start?
For me, this question is something that we address every day in the work and the mission that we have at Terra. Is in this context of urbanizations and building cities, where does the community stand? So we make sure that we provide programs that get them to understand the cities that we live in, understand how they can participate in making it greener and more sustainable and more protective to the environment. And the other thing that we do, and we're working very hard on, is to make sure that the nature is not forgotten. Yeah. I mean, today we talk about the human-centric city, but I'm really a proponent of the more than human-centric city. Yeah. The city that respects all beings within it, including nature. So we're trying to propose that because we believe the future master plans needs to work with nature and not think of it as, as an afterthought, because today our cities are getting sicker.
Yeah.
Nature is going to make us healthier. So for us, it's around making sure that we get the community to understand. We get them to also believe that they can take actions within their home environments to support the places that they live. But also at a bigger scale, our mission is to bring nature at the forefront of how we want to continue urbanizing in city environments. And then finally, what we do at Terra is we want to also get everyone around this whole notion that spaces to become sustainable needs to be meaningful to everyone. So integrating cultural programs within spaces that resonates with the people and goes beyond technical terms in trying to understand what sustainability means. So that's from the perspective.
Thank you, Marjan.
Well
One
said.
lever of transformation.
Okay. Again, we look at it from a process standpoint and also the technology that we use. And what I mean by technology is not just limited to equipment, for example, or certain tangible features that go into buildings. It could be more about, for example, the tools that you use and the methodology that you use in order to achieve a certain outcome following a particular process. So in that respect, when it comes to communities, what is the first thing that make up a community besides the physical environment? Obviously, it's the people. Yeah. So on many of the projects that we've been involved with recently and before, we tend to focus a lot on human psychology, because at the end of the day, you can't create a community unless you understand very well human psychology. And that is a very complex thing to look at, because it depends on the background of the people, where they come from, their demographics, and the list goes on, right? Especially in places like Abu Dhabi or Dubai, it's very cosmopolitan. It's not that easy to kind of determine a certain community behavior, right? So we say, okay, so we have to go through the process of really being able to study well that aspect, which is the human psychology on an individual and a collective basis to create that community. But then, lots of assumptions, lots of, let's just say, perceptions, prejudice could be, that go into this whole thing. How do you validate then this outcome? So you have, for example, an end product on paper, right? Or in a digital model. How do you validate that? So this is where we come in terms of technology. And we say, we try to simulate to the best of our ability, digitally. And then we find ways to kind of stress test those models and to try to either validate, challenge, for example, or correct much of those assumptions that go in place before we then go into what we call physical prototyping and testing. You need a proof of concept. There's been many projects, and for obvious reasons, I'm not going to mention them, where certain assumptions and perceptions were made about what this thing could be like and how it's going to perform without going through the process of stress testing and prototyping, achieving a proof of concept. It was already scaled, right? It was automatically scaled, and then to, unfortunately, some of people's dismay and surprise, things did not work as they were anticipated on paper. So I think the process and the tools in order to create certain models, stress test them, and validate them is really very important for us to create communities that you would like them to be as comfortable, right? Experience well-being, and be rooted to the context and their environment and their community.
Amazing, thank you. Kerem, one lever of transfer.
Okay, I'm going to sort of step outside of the designer's frame. I think one of the biggest challenges that we really face, and a really transformative lever, is around governance. Without appropriate governance and evidentiary processes that actually ensure that the work that we are legislating, and I would go as far as to say imposing on people like me to take into account during the design process, developers who are expending a great deal of money to make the right contributions in terms of minimizing low carbon, etc., and also contractors who need to really up their game in terms of the procurement and supply chains and their own approaches to adopting more sustainable methods of construction and reducing waste, making that measurable, making that a component of the design process, and also including the communities themselves that will eventually occupy these spaces. One of the things that I find difficult as an urbanist, as a master planner who's worked a lot around the world in large urban regeneration projects, is largely our end users are not included in the process of discussion. What makes a place good for a person to live in or work in or play in or legislate in? Ultimately, those factors need to be much more clearly defined. I think imposition of targets rather than notional targets is really critical, associated with penalties for not achieving that. It is really critical, and that will then precipitate as a lever fundamental change. That's what happened in Europe when the EEC came together. They set common targets that every state had to adopt, and there was no option. If a developer wanted to make a development, they had to make what was called a planning gain, which was a contribution to the community, either through sustainability or the addition of an element that could be used by the community, not just to take, but to actually give back.
It's related to what we were speaking in the speaker room as well, right? It's a consultative process for regulation.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. We're at the close of the panel. If there would be one singularly important message that you'd like to leave the audience with, what would that be? Whoever wants to start, please go ahead.
Let's go. Really, we should work toward creating cities with meaning and impact. And I really believe that's the key to being sustainable.
Thank you.
We're always trying to look for balance. Even when it comes to innovation, where supposedly you're pushing the envelope, it still has to be done in a balanced way. We don't want losers in the process. And unfortunately, sometimes this is what we tend to do. We push in one direction, and we don't see the collateral damage in other directions. So really, it's about establishing balance.
For my context, it's engagement. I think if we all walk away from today's sessions really believing in what we're talking about and supporting that process, we will start to see change. But if we don't engage in it, we just see it as an interesting topic to discuss, nothing will fundamentally change in this area, and it really needs to. I mean, we're seeing fundamental impacts across the environment in our region. Year on year, it's changing. We need to adopt and we need to engage as a community.
From ideas to action. Thank you very much for all your insights and the discussion, and thank you for participating.